So what's up, I am Ruben, and today we're back with Phoenotopia with a cheat and tricks video as suggested by Tree Ventilatoro. Thank you for the suggestion. This video will cover basic things you can do to skip early parts of the game. This game you get various upgrades and various tools to kind of navigate and do things a little bit easier and also access areas that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. However, certain things can actually be cheesed earlier if you know the tricks. In the very beginning, we go through various tricks. One of those is very famous, the double bomb tricks. So as you stack 2 bombs, you can actually get a little bit more height to get through certain areas, and more importantly, if you also do a sprint jump, you will actually get even more height than a regular jump. So as we can see here, we try to get up here with a regular jump and even a sprint jump, and that doesn't work. But if we do a sprint jump and do a hover boots, you get even more height with the hover. And then we will also do these. And that way you can get a little bit extra area. So if you combine all 3 of these with the 2 bombs, the sprint, and the hover, you can actually get through a lot of areas without using more stamina for things like your little spear here. If you were speedrunning the game, it's actually better to do constant sprint jumps as you can roll when you land without using energy. And also, since you are not running constantly, you can actually make it a lot further than you would if you were constantly running, since you just travel large distances in a small burst of energy. Another trick you can do with the spear is to make little extra bridges, that way you get a little bit more extra distance, and actually, since it's not entirely perfect, you can actually put the spear a little bit above some of your edges to give you a little bit extra height as well in certain situations. It can be hard to time, especially if you need to drop down instead of getting up, but as you can see here, this is actually a little bit below the very edge of this little ceiling platform, so you can use the spears to give you a little bit extra advantage in certain areas. And another benefit to the spears is that because you have 2 points, you can actually make a little bit extra bridges. So for some areas that are a little bit hard to get to, especially if you have lower stamina, you can use these to give you a little bit extra distance. That way you don't have to jump as far. Because the spear is actually a tangible object, you can actually use it to also cheat certain things. So as I mentioned before with the bridge, you can actually do it to cheat certain areas to make it a little bit easier or possible to do certain things. So not only for Gale herself, but you can also do it for certain other objects as well. Normally, you'd have to take that, put it on the ground, and then kind of shimmy it over every once in a while. But you can just make a bridge with your spears, and that way it makes this a little bit easier. Generally, the acid pools will hurt, but if you jump out of them quickly enough, which I sometimes fail here, you can actually jump through certain sections where there would be secrets without taking damage or doing some of the puzzles. Once you get the hover boots, if you get to a point where it's almost close enough for you to jump, but just not enough, what I highly suggest is you sprint jump and then shimmy left and right, and hopefully you will catch on some sort of pixel so you can make some sort of landing. So that's pretty much it for the general tips and tricks. I will go through the entire game, collect every collectible, and find ways to cheese the game, which I've used before. Some of them are in my 100% guide. Other ones I've figured out recently as I've beaten the game a couple other times since then, but here we go. Moonstones actually have physical properties, so it's actually a lot easier and sometimes faster to just hit them out of the place rather than doing the normal course or waiting until you have the right objects to be able to get them. So here you can use the hover boots, or more likely you can just knock it out of place and go grab it. Once you save the prince, Thomas will stay in Panselo, at which point I would highly suggest that you get the timed bomb. This will help in some certain puzzles, which obviously it's designed to do, but for some very strict timing, it'll be very necessary and just allow you to cheese things a little bit better. Normally for this section, you'd wait till you get the spear or the hover boots, but if you do 2 double bomb strats, the second jump's a little bit harder. It's way more precise, but if you do a double bomb strat, you can actually get there earlier than waiting for that. This one is quite a bit harder. I would wait until you're full stamina. The second one, you want to move a little bit. And there you go. Normally, you would need the hover boots on top of the spear to actually get over here, but again, with a well-placed spear and 2 bombs, you can make it just fine. While you can get this one way earlier and probably faster by doing it the regular way, you can cheat this if you get a spear just a little bit above the ledge, and that way you can just roll underneath it. But you just have to be pretty, there we go. It has to be pretty high up rather than level with the ledge. By this point of the game, you should have the Song of Ava for pretty much 6 minutes of unlimited stamina, but I am rushing through the game, so I don't. I would highly suggest you use it here, but basically stand on the edge here and just throw regular spears. Try to time it just right, you'll be able to get through this first phase immediately. This next one's a bit of a pain in the ass. I just duck when they start to attack. You'll take a few hits, but you generally can get through it. At a certain point, they'll be low enough that you can just swing, and you'll hit the bullets as they come to you, but you should be pretty good. I pretty much just wait for these things to get close enough. And even when taking hits, goes by pretty fast. While not entirely helpful for the first two, for the last one, if you throw a spear and it lands at the very edge, it'll actually help you a little bit because you gotta do a bit of a dash jump at the very end, more than likely. For the tower in the sand drifts region, you can actually use a lot of double bomb jumps to skip through a lot of these sections and not actually have to pull out of those things. Generally, at this point, you are actually far too weak to actually make this really viable rather than just moving stuff along, but it's something you can do. On the way to the Ouroboros hideout, there is a little room in here that if you hit this wire, it will lock you in the room. But if you do a frame perfect jump, you can go ahead and get in and out without tripping it. Once you get the spear bomb, you can actually do a lot of tricks and cheats, some of them including stun locking your enemies and bosses, and a lot of other times it's just cheating through the game and knocking things in a certain way. So obviously you can push these off the edge to get them a little bit easier, or you could just use the spear bomb and just destroy everything all at once. Obviously you want a little bit more stamina and not be so frivolous like I am and plan it a little bit better, but even so, even with me being frivolous, I still have plenty of time to do this. This ultimately achieves nothing, but you can skip through a little bit of the game if you get two of these and make a little bit of a bridge. And you don't miss like I just did. Come on. And it's helpful to use little bombs here to help you out. But you can skip through towards this last section, which you're not supposed to get to until mostly about 60% of the way through the game. Obviously, the teleport doesn't work, so you can't sequence break the game, but it is a nice little cheat that you can get through. Usually because of the time it takes to actually get this off, it's not worth your time. However, you can cheat the game a little bit if you use a spear bomb and get behind the little moonstone. There we go. Normally you would use a spear bomb for this, but if you actually hit it at the very top while you are at certain points, you can actually get this to knock the moonstone over, unless you're a complete goon like I am and it takes 30,000 attempts. But eventually you can get it if you want to do it a little bit earlier than using the spear. Got it! For both shooting gallery challenges, it's actually helpful to use the spear bomb, but really only necessary in the second challenge. You can use the crossbow in the first one, but here I'm only going to do one challenge just so you can see what to do. Remember that you can detonate this early, but as it hits multiple objects, it's going to be very, very helpful because it's going to explode all of them at once. And so if you have the spear bomb and you detonate it early, like this, you can get everything with a very little bit of stamina. You don't need to get every object, and oftentimes you'll see me hit some things, some of the little civilians here, just because you can. So as you can see, this is pretty easy. You really only have to maneuver or do anything whenever the group is up top. Otherwise, you pretty much just can leave it alone. There will be an onslaught at the very end. Just make sure to time this correctly, like I almost messed up. And I've already won, but I'm going to continue for the high score because I can. And because I have enough points, I can also kill you. You can also probably tell from my voice that I'm not as sick as I was when I recorded the other ones. This one is after the fact because I forgot to record it initially. If you get this just right, you don't need the spear to be able to get this. You can actually just knock it down. Usually it takes me about 30 minutes to figure it out, but you can. If you save up 30 moonstones by the time you get the spear, you can actually sequence break the game just a bit. Not too much, because obviously you need the song to be able to do anything. But you can get a nice little cheeky Easter egg if you go ahead and go left and go back to the front gate, where they go, hey, you're not supposed to be here, but they let you through anyway. Oh, no one is allowed to pass through here. Wait, I guess this going from east to west is acceptable. I think you must be a native of Cossette. I'll remember your face for next time. Carry on! For the first moonstone, you can choose to come back with the hover boots, or you can just use your crossbow or whatever ranged attack to knock it off the pedestal. And there you go. Once you get to the tower, you will have to use your new spear to climb and ascend, which is nice. But as I mentioned before, the spear actually has physical properties, and so for a lot of these pots and crystals that you have to carry, you can actually put them on the spears, and your alternate use of the spear will get rid of them, which means you can keep them out of the way of enemies, and also drop them later on or earlier than the game is kind of intending, and cheese through some of these little puzzles. So normally these would chase after you, you'd have to run and do all sorts of things, or you could just do what I did, and it gets rid of it pretty easily, and the challenge is gone. For this part, similarly, you can use the spear to your advantage by making this a little bit easier. So instead of using this as the leverage point, you can actually use a spear. I usually do this part first because I will usually make it too high and it ruins the whole thing because you can only have two at a time. But if you stand right here, it creates a perfect platform, drag it over, and you can just drop it when you are ready. You want to bring this up here first, grab a bomb, stand on the second ledge, the one on the first on the left, throw it, and you usually will be in the perfect spot to hit it. At which point, hit this, spear, done. For both the Moonstone and the Heart Ruby, you can actually use the same trick. Instead of using them on time puzzles, you can come back with a time bomb to make this really easy for yourself, or you can just come in and just do these things with the spear, and that way, it's a lot simpler. Otherwise, you have to do a thing with the little crystal there, time it right, drop it, it's a whole thing. For the Moonstone on the other side, you will have to take damage unless you want to do this naturally through the hover boots, but if you put a spear at the very bottom, you can land on it and then just work your way up. While not necessarily a secret, you can go ahead and make this a little bit easier on yourself. There's a few of these on top of a crystal, and top of a couple crystals in this area. You can use it to get to the little dog enemy over to the right, or you could just drop a bomb here once activating this once, and sprint, and you'll be able to get through the doors. I do believe this is kind of the intended solution, but there are a few other ways to take care of this. After beating Katosh, there is a certain skip you can do here. Normally you need the hover boots to be able to control your momentum and give you a little bit extra height, but with some well-placed spears, you can actually make it. This is actually the harder part, because if you go too high, which I think I just did, you will not be able to make it. What you need to be able to do, actually, is land a spear right here and be able to fall back down. I might be able to make it. There we go. And so I actually made it on the first try, which is surprising. So here you get the Moonstone. Here, if you do a double bomb sprint, you can actually make it to the other edge and get the gun way earlier. Why? Why, game? Alright, so you may be able to sprint jump and make it. You can. Okay, I was just afraid that you wouldn't. But there you go. Normally you have to get over here with the hover boots, but you can actually skip it by doing this pretty early. While taking the normal route might be a little bit faster, just because of how much stamina you may have at a certain point, you can use double bombs to actually get up here. So at the Pookie Farms, if you wait till one of them walks over to you and puts two bombs down, it will actually jump on top of the bombs, and you can jump on it to be able to get up that ledge without needing to hover boots. Obviously, this is a little bit harder to time because you're not in control of these little animals. Finally! So our first use of time bomb is actually going to be in this room. We're going to put it all the way to the left because that's the shortest one. And then we're going to go ahead and try and be quick about this. Hit it! And there you go. At the Tower of Dog, which is the battle one, if you use the spear bomb, you can get through a lot of these sections pretty easily, especially if you stand just pretty much where they would spawn. And remember to use your alternate on the spear bomb, because it will detonate early instead of when it hits an object. If you're close enough to the explosions, they will just die. For this, I push the box all the way over to the right. Wait for them to both come up, and that way they'll get hit with the explosion. For these, if you get stuck, you can explode it early, and the explosion travels vertically, so if you time it just right, you'll actually be able to hit them down, and hit them again. At the Tower of the King, I heavily suggest that you activate that, and instead of timing these, you can actually just go ahead and shoot them. You can tell by the metallic sound whether or not you're hitting them. Eventually you'll kill them, and it just makes it easier, that way you don't have to time the jumps quickly. And for the top section, I suggest laying down a timed bomb. That just makes it a little bit easier for some of these sections. At the beginning of the archive, you have two options. You can wait till you have hover boots, at which point you jump on these, and then you can jump on this part and hover over, or you can just stack the boxes and give yourself a path to go it earlier. While this is more time consuming than the normal path, you actually can skip through this little section here if you place spears in the right place. Normally you want them to be at the very bottom, so you want to go ahead and try to do that and do a sprint jump. You can use bombs, but be careful not to hit the second little latch on the rail car there, but you can skip through it. Again, it's actually slower than doing it the normal way, but a nice way to avoid some enemies. For this puzzle, you have to stand on these, and once you do one of them, a bunch of blades will come in, but for some of these, if you use a time bomb, you will actually be able to go ahead and do multiple at the same time, and also not be in danger while it goes off. They will hit the ones on the ground, but the ones up top you can actually do, because they will not actually be able to hit it. When you get to the first wall, if you do a spear low enough without your hover boots, you can make it up. And then you need to do a double bomb jump. You can have this, buddy. And if you do it low enough, you'll be able to make it. You will need to do a double bomb sprint jump to get to the other side here. You can also use a spear to, if you want to just have a little extra security, but a double bomb sprint jump should be enough. If you do the same thing on the other side, you can actually kind of sequence break the game. However, the game is smart enough that the developers were fortunate enough to recognize you shouldn't be there. So once you get to a certain point, there's a unique piece of dialogue to let you know you need to do the quest. Are you crazy? Have you any idea how dangerous it is to be on the other side of that wall? You could lose your life, and worse, I could lose my job. I guess my life is not important. Don't do it again, you hear? I'm gonna do it again. The sad part is, if you do it again, there's no actually different dialogue. She just tells you not to do it again. At the last wall, you can do something similar to the first wall, where if you use a spear and a well-placed shot, you can actually get above earlier than without using the hover boots. To get into the ancient geobase, you can do one of two ways. You can either wait until he does a slam move over the area where you need it, or you could just kill him, and the destruction that he causes, where he blows up, will actually destroy all of these at once. You would either do it 4 times if he slams it, or you could just do it once if he blows on top of it. The game will actually show you this if you're quick enough, but in case you're not, if you put a bomb on the other side of one of these battery generators and blow it up, it will actually push it further along, which will help you with some puzzles. You can also do it the other way, where you have a bomb, have a battery, and it'll push it in if you are quick enough. If you have a time bomb, you don't gotta worry about speed. After the save point in the Scorched lands, if you put a spear at the very bottom of this, you can actually climb up this section and avoid all the enemies to get the battery that you need to continue on. While carrying the battery, if you were careful enough, you can actually throw it through the gap without using any of your spears or anything. If you want to be careful, you can, but if you're good enough, you could just hoop it and swish it and get through all this whole section without doing any of that nonsense. For this area, if you push the battery to its zenith and then put a spear into the ledge above, you can actually jump up to it. And this way you get to the left and right. On the right is more important, because that way you'll get an energy gem, but the left is mostly just supplies and money. And this way, when you pull the battery out, you don't have all of those guns and turrets trying to kill you. So you can actually get through this pretty easily. Normally you would need the hover boots. However, if you do that trick, you don't need it at all. Along with this area, if you follow it naturally, you're going to evade some many turrets and kind of do a lot of tricks and stuff to get away. However, if you pay attention and you put some spears at the very bottom of this, what you can actually do is evade the turrets, because if you stick close enough to them, they will not actually register you. So as long as you don't hit them, they will not be pissed off, and you can jump up and get around. In the lower section of the Scorched Land, you actually have to do this puzzle. However, if you use a spear, it'll catch most of these objects, so they won't be in your way. These will likely knock it in, which will drop all your enemies, but if you just run through, this will happen, and you can just ignore them. Normally, to cross this area, you need the hover boots. However, if you do a spear at the very bottom and one right here, not the very top, you'll be too far away, and then do a double bomb sprint, you will actually have enough to cover the distance and make it. And the next area is the same thing. You want to go ahead and put it pretty low, just enough to have a little lip, and then somewhere around halfway through the stairs, double bomb sprint. I pushed the second bomb a little bit just to give me a little bit extra room, but you can make it. At certain points of the Mul Caves, you will have to put in some bombs to destroy some of these, either for shortcuts or for secrets. And so you can actually use a spear to give you a little bit of leverage. And also, if you're having trouble with some of the angled ones, you can actually put the bomb down and hit it in. The hitbox is pretty generous. It will usually soak it up, so you will be pretty good if you're generally within the vicinity. On the second screen at the top right, you can actually skip through some of the enemies and sections by putting 2 bombs and do a regular jump at the very end. And that way you can go get your hover boots without navigating the treacherous areas below. At the bottom left of the save point is a puzzle with a bomb that you can go through. However, if you have a timed bomb, you can actually use your slingshot or your crossbow to go ahead and cheese through some of it. It saves a little bit of time, not too much, especially if you miss a couple shots. But you don't have to blow all of these up. Instead, you can just keep moving instead of waiting for that bomb to do its own thing. After getting your rocket boots, you will have to go through the caves again. You can go up north through Ariadne and either fight or ignore the boss, or with some well-placed spears and jumps, you can actually avoid that whole section, especially since a lot of it is a lot of the chasing beetles, and then you get to time all of your little hovers so that you don't hit some spikes, and it's really annoying. They're coming! No one's talking about that dodge, and that dodge was beautiful. And that way it skips it. You can do that naturally with some hover jumps, but it's really annoying with all the beetles. I would use some spears to go ahead and just help you. That way you don't have to dodge everything in the way. For this room, you have to get one of the beetles to crawl up there, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. But if you put a spear at the very edge of this, it actually gives them a little bit more room to make it a little bit easier for you. Goad one of them out, he'll crawl around. So as he crawls over here, you want to stand over here. That way he'll charge at you. He'll take some damage, but if you hit him and give him that, he generally will always go that way. He'll take some damage, but it's a lot better than relying on the RNG. By the time you get to Terrelum, you should have a good amount of those skills and stamina. So if you use a lot of jumps and hover, you can actually skip through most enemies, as they will not be able to see you. For both towers at Aurantia, you will have 2 time trials for extra money. What you can do, instead of standing underneath it to give you just a little bit of extra time, especially for the one where you need to ascend, is to throw a spear bomb and hit it like that. That way you get a little bit of extra distance before you actually need to start running. When you get to this time trial here, it is actually very tight. You can do it if you naturally run, but it is almost perfect. So it is best to use a timed bomb to your advantage. Use a spear and a time bomb to get it up to speed. Go to, I would say about right here. There's a certain point where it will run out of range, but you'll have plenty of time even still. After doing the time trial here, you can actually get up here, and you can get up here too with a very well placed spear and a double sprint jump with a hover. The reason you want to do that is because there's a platform in the center of this arena, and you will need to jump and throw that, wait for it to hit. Gather out as much stamina as you need, because you'll be going pretty far. And then you can make it. The one thing I didn't notice when I was doing my 100% video is that these guys, when they shoot the little spike ball, will aim it where you are. It's not just a random location. So the higher you are, the higher it will shoot it. If I had known that, it would have made this a lot bit easier. So I'll put a spear there, hit it once, and usually I will crouch, and generally it hits both of those at the same time, which makes it a little bit easier. Every once in a while you'll get lucky and it hits that third one, but that's pretty rare. That'll do it. Not what I was going for, but it does it all the same. So for this puzzle, there's a certain way you can do it. You can do it with all 4 of these boxes, or you could do it with 2 of the tall ones and a spear. Throw the spear at the very top of that, don't jump. It'll be tall enough as you need it. Get all the way to the left as you can, roll, and there you have it. For the second tower, because the timing is a little bit tight, I will instead not charge a spear bomb, but instead try to use the time bomb much to my advantage. Keep in mind, you will be able to get up to one of these before you need to throw another spear. And the timing will get too hectic, so I would launch it right here, and then start going. As you can see, even though I messed up and went pretty slow, you still got plenty of time if you do it that way. I'm unsure if this is the intentional path, but I can't really find another way to do this without really getting hurt a lot. But basically, you want to come up here. And there will be a moonstone down here. Hit it twice. You'll hear it get knocked off. You can come grab it. And the same deal here. Just go ahead and throw a spear at the very bottom. You can't skip through most of this section. Just be careful that once you jump across this little chasm, some things will start chasing you. So you got to be acting quick and make sure you're paying attention to where you're landing. So what I like to do is just kind of jump across. You can kill those little drone things. That's usually a little bit easier. But once I get across here, I usually just hit the slingshot a couple times, and eventually, if you aim it towards one of those, the bottom of those things, it will hit the orbs eventually. For this time trial, it's pretty tight, but if willing to take damage, you can shave off a good amount of time and not have it be so strict. Right here, just let him hit you, spam the recovery. There you go. In Eden, there are not too many tricks or shortcuts, just because everything's pretty much just kind of a rush. And by now, you should know pretty much every skill that you have. The only thing really I can see here as a trick, or like a cheat of the game, is that when these two come out, if you stand over here, they pretty much can't hurt you. Because when they fly in the air like that, they will eventually rise too high and they'll shoot the wall. So if you're having trouble with this, especially in the zero, whatever that, like, the no upgrade challenge, whatever I forget what it's called, you can use this. It's kind of like a little cheat zone. For the double record fight, most of it is RNG, but it's typical. Just spear bomb the hell out of them until you can basically get rid of one of them. Purely just RNG. Usually does not go with this well. If you do get grabbed by him, just slam the sprint button, and you should recover without taking damage. For the fight with Katash, if you use a honey brew or elixir, if you really want to for some reason at this point, you will have increased stamina, and if you use spear bombs, and particularly if you jump while charging it, and you get a lucky break, you can actually stun lock him. Spear bombs are also very useful for him while he's up on the top, because if you jump and charge it, you can actually knock him out of his little attack there. For the double snake fight, there's not much to say. Usually I just stick to one wall or the other one just because it's a lot easier to time your jumps. And once they start bouncing, you actually don't need to time anything. As you can tell there, I have such a hard time with that. Once they throw the rocks down on the ground, I can just stand on them and just throw the spear bombs that have to jump on anything. And once they start bouncing, you will be perfect as long as you are against the wall. You can use an elixir, honey brew, or Miranda to try and get this fight to go back faster. I generally don't find it to be necessary. And if you can tell, projectiles will kill the magma, so you can actually use those So as you can see here, I didn't use any elixir or anything, and I was able to get through this. The first time I got hit was... pretty much the only time I got hit was at the very beginning. I had such a hard time jumping over those. For both of the computer bosses, I'd suggest you put a spear at the very top of this little ledge here. That way you'll be invulnerable for the first boss, but for the second one you want to move around, but it'll make it a lot easier. I also heavily suggest anything that increases your stamina, which is elixir, Miranda, or honey brew. You will need a lot of spear throws, and it'll make it a lot easier when you can actually hurt the thing. Every once in a while, I've done this before, and you'll notice that the health bar moves very slowly compared to what I have here. I don't know why it does that, but if you have that happen, I would just reload the save and do it again. It seems to like kind of weird glitch out at certain points. If you do choose to fight Ariadne, I hope that you have some sort of elixir, anything that increases your stamina and duration, because this fight sucks, and there are far too many friends. Most of the fight you want to be using your hover boots, because you can't stand still for too long, and most of this fight is based off of RNG. So if she's up there, there's pretty much nothing you can do. So the reason you want to use your hover boots is that way you can move left and right and avoid most of the attacks that are coming in. Because this is what happens if you're on the ground. The good news about this is that these enemies, if you hit them, will blow up their other friends as they explode. So there's potential that they can actually help you out. At this point, you could use another elixir if you need to. However, I'm close enough to the end of the battle that I'm going to choose not to, even though I have no health and I must scream. There we go. That's why this fight is annoying. Nothing about that was hard. That was just annoying. While technically not a boss fight, this is a huge fight and it's really annoying to deal with. Generally, what I try to do is stay to one side. I try to take care of the harpy first, since that will be the one that can hit you from the farthest range. But once I initiate the fight, I run away. Because once they get too close, there's too much going on, and you have no stamina. There we go. And at this point, you can pretty much just throw these. You should be able to kill at least one of them by the time they get to you. And that's it. For the chase sequence, I try to get up immediately and then keep sprinting. There are treasure chests and stuff, but you do not want to get them, as you will be pummeled immediately. Generally, if you're lucky enough, they won't hit them, but unfortunately, they did here. You want as much stamina as you can get. And then for this area, you want to get up there immediately. Try to have as much stamina as possible. Same thing, you want to keep sprinting. And then comes the fight, which is pretty much the same as always. Spear bombs for life sum. Just like for the first computer, you'll want to put a spear at the very top as much as you can. But for the first phase, instead, you will actually want to kill the robots. And to skip our dialogue, you can actually just attack. You want to do the Song of Ava, so you're pretty much unlimited stamina. Once you get rid of this robot, you can pretty much just stand up here and throw. Otherwise, you gotta constantly dodge her attacks, and it's really annoying. And you want to stop her before she gets to her next phase. Or next attack thing. Next path, I mean. There we go. If you can, you want to destroy these, but don't harp on it too much. Just try and kill this thing in one phase, otherwise it's really annoying. Just gonna take the next hit here if it's there. There you go. So the shadow boss is actually pretty easy. I pretty much just jump and spear. Eventually she'll teleport away. But don't close in on you, and you'll be able to figure out which one it is pretty easily. Stop eating! I do like that they gave the clone the lamp as an option to use, because it will have all of your items. For this fight, your stamina will pretty much be gone. So I usually save the elixir or Miranda for it, but you want to do the same trick as the other fight. But that's going to do it for this video. If you're wondering why I'm not doing the phalanx, it's simple, because this fight is brutal, and I don't remember how to do most of it. It's been 15 years since I fought him, so yeah, that's going to be fun. I do have a video on it that I've done quite a bit of time ago, and I'm going to be that scumbag that says, if you want to learn tricks on how to do that, go please watch that video. I will link it above, but that's going to do it for this video. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified of future videos. If there's anything that I missed or strats that you think that I should know or anybody else should know, please put in the comment section below, because there may be some things that I'm unaware of. I went through this game as much as I could, but maybe there's some things that I skipped or was unaware of, because I didn't go for a full 100%, just kind of going for the tricks and whatnot. But thanks everybody for watching. I will catch you next time. One out of this.